This is Miss Israel from Einstein High School. We're going to be working on Unit 2, Topic 1, Question 29. Two functions, f of x and g of x, are represented below. So we have two functions here. Remember that a function can come in a lot of different forms. A function can be a table. It can be a graph. It can be an equation. Okay? So here we have a table to represent f of x and a graph to represent g of x. Okay, so don't be intimidated by that. Just looking at two different functions in two different ways. Notice they're labeled here, so I'm going to just go ahead and highlight. Here's f of x, and here is g of x. So that's our hint there. So f of x is going to be our table, g of x is going to be our graph. Pretty similar to question 28. We're going to look at two different columns here, column A and B, and we're going to compare the values. The thing I want to remind you of when you answer these types of questions is we're searching for something. There's something that's unknown. So we're not just going to add the numbers that are already given to us. We're actually going to have to find some values and use the table and graph to help us with that. Okay, let's read the directions. Compare the statements in columns A and B. In the empty space at the end of each row in the table, write the column letter A or B of the expression that has the greater value. If both expressions are equal, write equals. Okay, so let's just work through this piece by piece. So starting with A. Okay. So we have f of 1. So we actually need to figure out what that value is. What do we know here? This is f of x. That's our function here. So we know that x equals 1, and we want to know what is the y value. Remember, f of x equals y. So x equals 1. So when x equals 1, what's our y value? Y is equal to 2. So we're going to say f of 1 equals 2. Okay? And we're going to compare that to g of negative 3. So we want to know what's g of negative 3. We know x equals negative 3, and we want to know what y is. G of x is also going to equal y. So when x equals negative 3 over here, y is going to equal positive 1. So g of negative 3 is equal to 1. Remember, we're writing the column letter that is greater. So in this case, column A is greater. Okay, part B. The maximum value of f of x. The maximum value is a y value. So when we're dealing with minimum and maximum, we're talking about y. So we want to know the highest y value. F of x equals y. So we're looking in this column here, f of x, and the maximum value that I see is 9. So there's our maximum. I'm going to label that. And so the maximum value is positive 9. I'm just going to write that down. The x-intercept of g of x. Okay, x-intercept. Remember, the x-intercept is a point on the x-axis. So I'm looking for when does this graph cross the x-axis. There's x, and that's going to occur right there at negative 2. So again, which one is greater, column A or B? Well, 9 is definitely greater than negative 2, so A is greater. Okay, part C. We have a bit of an expression here. So we're looking for f of 0 minus f of 4 divided by 4. Before we can answer that question, we actually need to figure out what f of 0 is. So let's use our table. So f of 0 is going to give us 8 when x equals 0, y equals 8. F of 4 when x equals 4, y equals 0. So that's our f of 0 and f of 4 values. So we have 8 minus 0 divided by 4. Well, that's 8 divided by 4, and that equals 2. Okay, g, we're going to do g of 2 times g of 4. Remember that dot is an indication that we're going to multiply. So we need to actually find the values of g of 2 and g of 4. G of 2 when x equals 2, y equals negative 3, times g of 4 when x equals 4, y equals negative 2, and negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. So in this case, 2 is less than 6, therefore column B is greater. Part D, the value of x that makes f of x equal 0. So what do we have here? We're looking for x. X is unknown. That means we know that y equals 0. So that's going to be our right column here on the table. So we're actually going to go the opposite direction here. We know that y equals 0. Let me color here, erase my old stuff. So we know that y equals 0. And the x value that occurs there is 4. So when y equals 0, x equals 4. And for column B, we're going to do g of negative 5 plus g of negative 3. All right. So when x equals negative 5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Y equals 3 plus g of negative 3 is going to be 1. That's x equals negative 3, y equals 1. And that's going to be 4. So in this case, column A is equal to column B. And finally, part E, A plus B, if f of A equals 5 and f of B equals negative 10. So we don't know what in this case. Well, we're looking for what's inside the parentheses. Well, x goes inside the parentheses here, right? So we actually need the x values here. So we're going to look at that right column again. So we want to know when y equals 5. Let's find it here. When y equals 5, there it is. What's x? X is negative 8. Let me write that down here. So a is going to equal negative 8. And when y equals negative 10, it's x we're looking for. So x equals, what was that? I forgot already. 7. So b equals 7. And then we want to know a plus b. Well, negative 8 plus 7 is negative 1. And g of 4, so when x equals 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, y equals negative 2. So in this case, again, column A is greater. Column A really won that battle there, and that is going to do it for number 29.